They laughed when they heard it. To Evelyn, $10. The sound echoed quick, sharp, cruel across the dark wood of the room. It wasn't just laughter, it was dismissal. My mother hid a smile behind her silk scarf, her eyes smug and satisfied. Derek leaned back in his chair, arms folded like a prince receiving his crown. Even the cousins, barely family, mostly strangers, grinned as if they'd won a game I didn't know we were playing. I didn't move, didn't blink. I just sat there, hands in my lap, eyes steady on the man holding the paper. Mr. Whitmore cleared his throat. I saw the flicker in his eyes. He knew this wasn't over, but the others didn't. To them, I was done, silenced, pushed aside like an old photograph no one remembered taking. Let them think that. I had been quiet my whole life, but not today. No one asked if I was okay. Of course not. That would have ruined the show. The chairs creaked as someone shifted. A cough, a sigh, a soft chuckle. $10. That's what I was worth. My mother kept her eyes low, but her smile said enough. Derek looked at me once, then away, like he couldn't quite hold it in. That smirk, that shrug. I stayed still, hands folded, shoulders back. I'd practiced this posture for years. Mr. Whitmore adjusted his glasses. Then he paused. A breath too long. The room leaned in. "There's a private letter," he said. "For Evelyn?" Silence. Not polite silence, not respectful. The kind that makes your skin hum, the kind that listens. Someone cleared their throat. I didn't turn. The envelope was already in his hand. Cream paper, my name in ink. I recognized it. I didn't reach for it, not yet. Because now finally everyone was watching me. He used to call me his shadow. I followed him everywhere. Quiet, careful, invisible when needed. I brought him his tea, learned his calendar, knew when not to speak. At meetings, I'd sit in the corner, hands folded, smile when introduced, then disappear again. He said I was soft, said I felt too much, but when I was 7 and drew him a picture of his office, he put it on his wall. Right next to his diplomas, he said that was love, back then. He told me once, write something worth reading or don't waste the ink. So I did both, I wrote in silence. Short stories, essays, letters I never sent. He never read any of them. Later, the distance grew, first in messages, then in tone, then in silence. Family emails stopped including me. Dinners were held without me. Vacations posted, not shared. I still sent cards, still showed up. They forgot I had a voice. So I learned to carry my story, quietly. When he got sick, no one rushed home. Not Derek, not the cousins. Mom stayed busy with garden clubs and wine nights. Said it was too hard to see him like that. I packed my bags, left my job, came back to a house that didn't remember me. The walls felt colder, his voice quieter. He didn't say thank you, not once, but I fed him. Changed his clothes, wiped his mouth when the medicine dripped. Sometimes he looked at me like he almost remembered, but the words never came. They called once a week, fought over bills. Who would pay for hospice? Who wouldn't? I stayed. One night, he fell asleep holding my hand. The same hand he once brushed aside at a dinner party because I'd spoken out of turn. I watched him sleep, wondered if he knew it was me, wondered if that mattered anymore. And then 2 days before he died, I found the will. It was just there. His laptop, open, no password, like it wanted to be found. I didn't mean to look, but once I saw the file name Final Will Revised, I couldn't look away. I clicked, read every line, slowly, twice. The house to Mom, the stocks to Derek, and to me $10. No message, no note, no explanation. I stared at the screen until it blurred. $10. After all of it, the sleepless nights, the cleaning, the feeding, the waiting, the watching, the staying. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't break anything. I sat back, let it sink in. Then I opened my notebook, the one I'd kept since college, the one filled with things I never said, and I began to write. Not a story, not a letter, a plan. Because if they thought I would disappear quietly, they didn't know me at all. The next morning I called Mr. Whitmore, asked to meet alone. Just the two of us. He'd known me since I was 10, taught me chess in his waiting room, called me the quiet one with sharp eyes. When I arrived, he looked tired, but kind. I told him I had something my father might have wanted added if he'd had more time. A sealed envelope. Thick. My name on the back. I handed it to him without a word. Open it after the will is read, I said. Read it only to me. He hesitated, then nodded. No questions, no judgment, just that slow lawyer's nod of understanding. I thanked him, shook his hand, walked out, didn't look back. I wasn't angry. Not really. Anger had burned out years ago. What I had now was focus. Because sometimes silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's the sound of something starting. The room smelled like old paper and polished wood. Everyone was already seated. Same smirks, same silence dressed as sympathy. I walked in last, took my place near the end of the table. No one looked up. Mr. Whitmore cleared his throat, shuffled the papers. My mother adjusted her scarf. Derek scrolled his phone. The cousins whispered. They thought they already knew how this would end. They were wrong. He read the will line by line. The house to Mom, the stocks to Derek, the paintings, the furniture, the car, all spoken for. Then finally my name. To Evelyn, $10. The room chuckled again. Soft, confident. Mr. Whitmore paused. There's also a letter, private, for Evelyn only. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out the envelope I'd given him. He didn't look at me. Just handed it over. I took it. Hand steady. Let them laugh. Let them gloat. They had no idea what came next. The envelope felt heavier than it looked. Cream paper. My name in thick black ink. My father's handwriting. I opened it slowly. Quiet filled every corner. You could hear someone breathe. I unfolded the page. Read the first line aloud. To my daughter, Evelyn. The only one who saw me for who I was and stayed anyway. The room shifted. My mother's hand stopped mid-adjustment. Her eyes narrowed, jaw tight. Derek leaned forward, elbows on the table. The cousins stopped whispering, stopped smiling. I kept reading, my voice calm, steady. You held my hand when I couldn't speak. You brought dignity when the rest brought lawyers. This isn't an apology. You know I don't do that. Mr. Whitmore raised an eyebrow. The letter trembled slightly in my hands. This is acknowledgement. That word, heavy, sharp, true. I looked up. No one spoke. And for once, just once, they all listened. My fingers pressed into the paper. I could feel my heartbeat in them. The others inherited wealth, I read aloud. You inherited my truth. I let it hang. One breath, two. Then slowly, I slid the letter across the table, toward Mr. Whitmore. You can finish it, I said. He hesitated just a second, then picked it up and read. A private trust was established for Evelyn. Irrevocable. Confidential. Signed 2 months before my death. Value $3.1 million. The silence cracked. Derek's mouth opened, but no sound came. My mother's hand dropped to her lap, her knuckles white. That's not possible, she whispered. Mr. Whitmore didn't flinch. He nodded once. There is also a video. Dated, time-stamped, stored securely, confirming his intentions. I didn't need to see it. I already knew what it said. Because every word in that video, I wrote it. Did I lie? No. I reminded him of the times Derek drained the family account and was called just careless. Of the bruises on my arms after Mom's accidents with furniture. How no one asked. Not once. Of the birthdays they forgot, the dinners I wasn't invited to, the silence that filled every space I walked into. I reminded him of the version of me they never saw, the one who stayed, who listened, who buried her voice just to keep peace. He read every word, alone. Didn't say much, didn't need to. But when he was done, he looked at me longer than he ever had. Then he picked up the pen, signed his name, and slid the paper back like it weighed nothing at all. That was 2 weeks before he died. They thought he'd left me behind. But in the end, he gave me something more than money. He gave me the last word. They looked at me like I'd stolen something, like I'd reached into their pockets, not earned what was already mine. But I didn't shout, didn't smirk, didn't gloat. I just breathed because that letter wasn't revenge. It was proof. Proof that being quiet doesn't mean being weak. Proof that staying doesn't mean settling. Mr. Whitmore folded the paper, placed it back in his case. The room stayed frozen. No one dared speak first. Derek's fingers tapped the table. My mother's eyes glistened not with grief, but something sharper. Disbelief, discomfort, maybe regret. I wouldn't know. I stopped guessing what they felt long ago. I stood up. They expected a speech, an apology, maybe even a thank you. But I owed them none of those, so I gave them what they gave me, nothing. Just turned, walked to the door, and left them sitting in the silence they once forced me to carry. I didn't look back, didn't check if they followed, didn't wait for someone to call my name, because they never had before. Not when I graduated early, not when I published my first essay, not when I came home to care for a dying man they barely visited. I walked through the hallway like I belonged to it. For once I didn't shrink to fit the space. Outside the sky was gray, the air sharp, but I could breathe, really breathe. For years I had stayed small, polite, presentable. They liked me better that way, easier to forget, easier to ignore. But not today. Today they saw what silence becomes when it sharpens, when it stands. I didn't slam the door, didn't rush, just place one foot in front of the other like someone finally walking out of a story they never agreed to be written into. They never noticed the way I watched, how I remembered who said what, who showed up, who didn't. I was never loud, but I listened. When Derek called Mom the backbone of the family while she let him steal from Dad's account. When Mom said I was too emotional right after blaming me for falling into the coffee table she pushed me toward. They said I was sensitive, as if that was shameful, but I was just awake. To the cracks, to the whispers, to the parts of our story no one wanted written down, so I wrote them. Not to expose, not to punish, but to remember. Because when no one else does, memory becomes a form of survival. They edited me out of their version, but I kept the receipts, the emails, the photos, the quiet moments where truth lived, and when the time came, I handed it back. Neatly, calmly, completely. They always controlled the room, the stories, the spotlight, even the silence. Mom told people I was shy. Derek joked I was just a background character. Everyone laughed. I smiled along, but while they performed, I observed, watched how grief became currency, how they measured love in inheritance. They rehearsed their roles well, the grieving wife, the accomplished son, tears where cameras could catch them. But when the moment turned, when Mr. Whitmore read my father's words, they didn't know their lines anymore. Their faces cracked. Postures shifted. Because the one person they counted out had become the one person with the script. Not to embarrass them, not even to win, just to speak. Finally, because when someone steals your voice for long enough, reclaiming it feels like thunder. Not loud, but certain. And once it starts, you don't stop. Mom always smiled in front of people. That careful, practiced smile polished like her pearls, but it never reached her eyes. Not when I brought home awards, not when I read her poems I wrote, not even when I quit my job to care for Dad. She said it was the right thing to do. But not once did she offer to help. She stayed busy, too busy to visit, too tired to call. Still, she told everyone what a good daughter I was, like it was her achievement, her design. In that room, after the letter, her smile dropped for the first time. She couldn't hide behind it anymore. Her fingers trembled, her mouth opened then shut. Not a single word came. And I realized maybe she wasn't heartless. Maybe she was just terrified of being seen without her mask. And now finally everyone saw her. Derek never liked silence. He filled it with jokes, loud opinions, and stories where he was always the hero. People believed him. He had charm, shoulders back, a voice that carried. Dad called him a natural leader, even when he lied, even when he took what wasn't his. I watched him get second chances I never got. Watched him fail upward, watched him smile while others paid the price. But now he said nothing, no jokes, no swagger, just a tight jaw and restless fingers. His eyes darted from Mom to Mr. Whitmore, searching for a loophole. There wasn't one. He leaned forward, trying to speak, but what could he say? That it was unfair, that I didn't deserve it. The truth sat heavy in the air, and for once, Derek couldn't talk his way out of it. He always hated when I was quiet. Now, my silence was louder than his voice had ever been. Dad never said goodbye, not with words, not with a look, just one last breath, then stillness. But he left something behind, not just the money, not the house, not the name etched on office walls. He left a shift, a crack in the script. For once, his final act wasn't written for them. It was written for me. Not out of guilt, not out of love maybe, but something real, something rare, recognition. He saw what I carried, what I cleaned up, what I gave even when I got nothing back. He saw who stayed, who did the work, who stood by him, quiet, steady, unnoticed, that trust. That letter, they weren't gifts, they were receipts, proof that I wasn't invisible, not to him, not in the end, and maybe that was all I ever needed, to be seen, once, clearly, finally. This wasn't a win. It didn't feel like triumph, no cheers, no applause, just silence and the weight of being right after years of being dismissed. I didn't want revenge. I wanted honesty. Not loud, not cruel, just clear. They thought I planned it for drama, for shock. But really, I planned it so I could breathe again. I didn't need their approval, didn't want their pity. I just wanted them to sit with the version of the story they never told, to hear the things they ignored, to taste the bitterness they left in me. Not forever, just long enough to know it was real, long enough for the room to feel what it's like to be unseen. And in that moment, as eyes dropped and mouths stayed shut, I knew. They finally understood what it meant to be me. I didn't slam the door behind me, didn't need to. The silence I left was louder than any noise. No one followed, no one called out. Maybe they didn't know what to say, maybe they never did. I stepped outside. The air was sharp, cold against my skin, but it felt clean. Like something had been scraped away. For years, I walked into rooms where I wasn't wanted, smiled, helped, stayed. Now I was walking out of one, not bitter, not broken, just done. No speeches, no dramatic turns, just the sound of heels on tile and a weight I didn't realize was finally gone. I didn't have to explain, didn't have to prove. I already had. Behind me, they stayed seated, still holding the version of me they created. But I had taken mine back, piece by piece, and I carried it with me into the quiet that no longer hurt. They used to say I was strong, said it like a compliment, said it when they wanted me quiet. You're tough, Evelyn. You don't let things get to you. You're the steady one. But they didn't see the nights I cried in my car, didn't hear the way I rehearsed every word just to be heard once. They called it strength, but it was survival, holding pain in your chest so it doesn't spill across the dinner table. Smiling through birthdays you weren't invited to, sending gifts to people who forgot your name. That wasn't strength, that was exhaustion. And still, I showed up. Still I stayed, not for them, but because I couldn't bear to become like them. Detached, selective, loud with nothing real to say. Now, as I walked away, they watched me maybe for the first time. And for once, I didn't carry their silence. I left it behind. The door closed gently behind me. No bang, no final word, just a click, soft, absolute. Inside, they were still sitting, Derek with clenched fists, Mom staring into nothing. The cousins confused. They hadn't seen it coming. No one had. They thought I'd vanish, take the insult quietly like always. But I didn't vanish. I rewrote the ending, and I didn't need to watch them break. Because it wasn't about revenge, it was about standing, once, fully, without apology. Let them sit in the questions how, when, why. Let them replay every moment they dismissed me, every joke made at my expense, every time I showed up, and they looked through me. Now they'd look at the door I walked out of and wonder when I started planning. Truth is, I didn't plan to win. I planned to stop losing, and that changed everything. They'll ask how long I knew, how long I'd been preparing. They'll think it started with the will, or the meeting with Mr. Whitmore, but it started long before that. It started the first time they forgot my birthday, the first time they laughed at my dreams, the first time I walked into a room and felt small. I didn't plan revenge. I built boundaries, one slight at a time, one silence too many, one maybe next time that never came. Each moment added up until one day I stopped asking for space and took it. So when I handed over that letter, it wasn't spite. It was closure, the kind they never gave me. They'll wonder how I pulled it off. Truth is, you don't pull off truth, you just stop hiding it. And that's what they never understood. I never wanted their spotlight, just my place in the light. Being quiet isn't easy. People think it means peace, obedience, grace. But really, it means carrying what others refuse to hold. Their anger, their guilt, their expectations. I was the keeper of balance, the calm during storms they caused. They yelled, I absorbed. They forgot, I remembered. Every missed apology, every backhanded comment, every time they said you're too sensitive when all I did was feel. Quiet taught me patience, but it also taught me power, because silence isn't weakness. It listens, it sees, it waits. And when it speaks, it doesn't ask for permission. That day in that room, they met my silence, not the one they shaped, but the one I claimed. And for once, it didn't shrink under their voices. It stood tall, and they for the first time had nothing to say. They'll rewrite the story. They always do. Say I was cold, calculated, say I waited for the perfect moment to strike. But I wasn't the villain, and I'm not the victim either. I was just the one who stayed, the one who remembered, the one who refused to disappear. They wanted me silent but grateful, invisible but giving, present but never seen. And for years I tried to be good, tried to be enough. But enough is never enough when they've already decided what you're worth. So I stopped performing. That letter, it wasn't revenge, it was release. Not just for me, but for the truth they buried so well, they forgot it was still alive. I didn't need to expose them. All I had to do was stop hiding myself. And when I did, everything shifted. I didn't take anything from that room. No folder, no copy of the will, no last glance. What I left behind was heavier. The silence they once used against me, I left it with them. To sit in, to stew in, let them fill it with questions, with doubt, with everything they never asked me. I gave them space to feel small, not out of cruelty, but because it was the only way they'd ever understand. You can't teach empathy to people who never listen. But you can show them what being unheard feels like. They had the wealth, the titles, the audience. But I had the truth, and when the truth is finally spoken, you don't need to shout, you just leave, and let the echo do the rest. So I walked out lighter, not because I was done grieving, but because I was done explaining. They expected gold, applause, closure tied with a bow. Instead, they inherited silence. Not the kind I used to carry, but the kind that lingers after truth hits the floor. Derek looked for a loophole. Mom scanned the papers as if one more read would change the facts. But it was all legal, all final, all real. There was no appeal for what they lost because it wasn't just money. It was the illusion, the belief that they were untouchable, that their version of the story would stand forever. They had crafted their roles for years. The loving mother, the successful son, the poor forgotten daughter. Only now the script had changed, and I hadn't shouted to be heard. I'd whispered, and the whole room had listened. They thought they owned the legacy, but I held the truth. And in the end, truth speaks loudest when it doesn't need to raise its voice. They'll say, I took something that wasn't mine, that I manipulated, played the game, turned grief into opportunity. But they forget I didn't take anything. I claimed what was already owed, not in dollars, not in property. In truth, in acknowledgement. The trust wasn't a reward, it was a record. A quiet line drawn in permanent ink saying, she was here, she mattered. While they fought over titles and things to display, I held memories of hands held through sickness, of nights spent alone in that cold house, of love that was never loud but never left. They inherited the surface. I inherited the root. And no matter how they spin the story, they'll never change what that paper said or what his signature meant. It wasn't love. Maybe not, but it was real, and sometimes real is all we ever need to heal. They remembered birthdays, just not mine. They remembered graduations, just not the ones I walked across alone. They remembered family dinners, photos, holidays, but not the seat I always filled, quiet, unnoticed, clearing the plates after. They forgot who paid the overdue bill when Dad's treatment ran long, who folded his clothes, who read to him when his eyes gave out. They forgot because it was easier. Easier to praise Derek for sending flowers than to thank me for wiping blood off the bathroom floor. Easier to call me strong than to ask if I was tired. They remembered what made them look good, not what made me real, and maybe they still don't remember. But that letter did. That trust did. And now finally the story remembers too. Even if they don't say it, they know it. They lost something. But I reclaimed myself. I never got an apology, not from Derek, not from Mom, not from anyone who watched me fade and said nothing. No one ever said, "We were wrong. We should have asked how you were. We should have seen you." They thought time would erase it, thought my silence meant it didn't matter. But silence isn't forgiveness. It's waiting, it's watching, it's surviving when no one thinks you need to. They gave apologies to each other for small things. Missed calls, forgotten gifts, but for the years they erased me, nothing. Still, I showed up, still I stayed. And now I'm gone. Not bitter, not broken, just done asking for what they'll never give. The letter wasn't revenge. It was closure, an apology in reverse, not from them to me, but from me to myself, for staying too long in rooms that never clapped when I entered. I forgave them, not with a phone call, not with some big speech, but quietly in pieces. I forgave Derek for taking and still believing he deserved more. I forgave Mom for shrinking me to make herself feel taller. I forgave the cousins for standing by laughing when I disappeared from the family thread, not because they earned it, but because I needed room to breathe. And resentment takes up too much space. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means releasing the weight so you can walk without limping. They still carry their stories, still tell them the same way. I let them, because I'm no longer in them. The girl in the background, she's gone. What's left is someone whole, someone who knows her worth even when no one else says it out loud, and that's more powerful than revenge ever was. There's a power in leaving, not slamming the door, not screaming, just walking out on your own terms. They thought I'd stay, play the role, be grateful for crumbs. But I'd played quiet for too long, held my breath for too many years, and the moment I stepped outside that room, I didn't just leave them, I left the version of me they created, the agreeable one, the helper, the girl who never asked for anything. Now I ask for nothing because I finally have enough. Enough peace. Enough truth, enough self. They'll spin their stories, pretend nothing changed. But they'll always remember the day I stood up without raising my voice and everything shifted. Because sometimes leaving isn't the end. It's the start of being exactly who you were meant to be before the world told you to be smaller. I didn't try to fix it, didn't call after, didn't send a message saying no hard feelings, because some things aren't meant to be mended, just understood. Let them sit with it. Let Derek replay the moment he realized the trust wasn't in his name. Let Mom wonder if Dad ever really saw her the way she always claimed he did. Let the cousins whisper, trying to make sense of a story they never cared to know. I gave them nothing to fight. No fuel, no anger, just the truth. And the space to feel it. Because silence when you've earned it is not emptiness. It's clarity. They can call it dramatic. They can call it cold, but I know what it really was honest, and for the first time they had to face that honesty without me softening the blow. They called it a betrayal, said I blindsided them, said I humiliated the family, but betrayal? That was when they left me off the invite list, when they laughed at my dreams, then asked for favors in the same breath. That was when I sat at Dad's bedside while they debated flights from across the country but never showed up. I didn't betray them. I just stopped covering for them. Stopped carrying the weight they refused to admit existed. They had no problem taking the spotlight. But the truth, that was too much. because the truth didn't flatter them, didn't match the version of events they'd told at parties. So now they call it betrayal because it made them uncomfortable. But discomfort isn't betrayal. It's just the sound of a lie falling apart. And I let it fall not to hurt them, but to finally stand in a story that felt like mine. I live by the coast now. A small house, quiet street, no name on the mailbox, no one knows the address, no surprise visits, no forced conversations, just space. I wake up to waves, not voices trying to shrink me. I cook for myself, write when I want, walk without looking over my shoulder. There are no family group chats here, no birthdays forgotten out loud, just stillness. And in that stillness, I found pieces of myself I thought they'd taken for good. I don't check their messages, don't return their calls. Not out of anger, but because there's nothing left to say. Some things end without ceremony, without closure, without guilt. They call it distance. I call it peace. And for the first time in years, I breathe without bracing. This isn't escape. It's arrival. People think peace is quiet, but real peace, it hums. It lives in the spaces where pain used to echo, in the mornings without dread. In the nights where sleep comes easy. For a long time, I thought peace would come from being loved louder, noticed more. But it came when I stopped asking, stopped waiting for them to choose me, stopped shrinking so they'd feel taller. Now I don't carry their shame, or their silence, or their stories told in half-truths. I carry mine, fully, finally. And it doesn't weigh me down, it lifts. Because this peace wasn't given. It was earned through grief, through stillness, through letting go. They may never say my name with kindness, may never rewrite the story to include the truth, but I don't need them to, because peace after fire isn't about what you rebuild, it's about knowing you survived. I used to beg for scraps of love, a smile, a kind word. A seat at the table where no one saved me a chair. I thought if I gave more, they'd finally see me. If I stayed quiet, they'd finally listen. But now I don't need their love. Not the conditional kind. Not the kind that only shows up when it's convenient or when people are watching. I've learned that real love doesn't ask you to disappear. It doesn't punish you for feeling. It holds you even when you're messy, even when you're tired of pretending. They never held me that way. But I hold myself now. With softness, with truth, with the care I kept waiting for. They may never change, may never call, may never say I'm proud of you. That's okay. Because I say it to myself, and this time I believe it. For most of my life, they wrote the story for me. The quiet daughter, the helper, the afterthought. Page after page, I let them hold the pen. Told myself it was easier that way. But easy never felt right. It felt hollow. So I took the pen back. And I rewrote the ending. Not one where I prove them wrong. Not one where I'm the hero with applause. Just one where I'm free. Where my worth isn't up for debate. Where silence doesn't mean surrender. Where I am no longer waiting for permission to be seen. The story didn't need a twist. It needed truth. So I gave it that. Line by line. Without anger. Without begging. Just clarity. And when I closed that chapter, I didn't slam the book, I simply turned the page. The window faces the ocean. Each morning, I sit with my coffee and let the waves remind me some things return without being asked. Not like people, not like memories. The sea doesn't judge. It doesn't remember who left first, who said the crueler thing, who stayed silent too long. It just moves, in, out. No shame, no performance. Some days I write. Some days I don't, but every day I exist without explaining. That's the luxury I never had growing up to just be. Not useful. Not pleasing. Not perfect. Just real. The wind taps gently against the glass like it's checking in. And for once I don't flinch, because there's no one left to shrink myself for. Only the tide, the morning light, and me finally enough exactly as I am. If it were you, what would you have done? Would you have stayed silent, swallowed the $10 and smiled through the sting? Or would you have spoken, not with anger, but with something sharper, truth? They called it dramatic. Said I made a scene. But it wasn't a scene, it was a reckoning. And it didn't need noise, it needed nerve. Because telling the truth in a room built on denial isn't easy. It costs you something. but losing yourself costs more. So I chose peace, but not before choosing justice. I chose to be remembered not as the quiet girl in the corner, but as the one who finally stood up. So now I ask you, if this were your story, your room, your name on that envelope, would you speak? Would you stay? Would you rise? Because some stories don't wait forever. Some doors open once. If you've ever sat in silence, swallowed words just to keep peace, then maybe you already know what it feels like to be me. To be overlooked, but still show up. To be hurt, but still stay kind. To carry the weight of what wasn't said and still hope somewhere deep down that one day someone might finally see you. This isn't just my story. It's ours. Because I know I'm not the only one who's walked out of a room and left the version they built for me behind. So, if you've ever felt that invisible, dismissed, replaced, comment below. I've been there too. Not for sympathy, but for connection. Because stories like this, they heal more than one person. And maybe, just maybe, your voice is the next one someone else has been waiting to hear. If this story stirred something and you don't keep it to yourself, share how it made you feel in the comments. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs today. And if you'd like more stories that speak the quiet truths, hit subscribe. We're just getting started.